Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and this is the review of the Samsung Galaxy S5. Comes in at $199 with a 2-year contract, and this is actually the Verizon model, and you can get it on just about any carrier, and you do have a couple options, white and black, 16 or 32 gigabytes. This is the 16 gigabyte model, and it's got some impressive specs. The phone overall, initially I didn't like so much, but I actually have some pretty positive things to say about it. So let's first talk about specs, then we'll go into design. We'll talk about a couple other things, and then I'll give my thoughts at the end. The Galaxy S5 comes equipped with a 2.5 GHz quad-core Snapdragon 801 processor, 2 GB of RAM, and is upgradable to 128 GB of storage using a microSD card. It also has a large battery, 2800 milliamp hours, good for at least a day of use, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later. You also have 802.11 ABGN and AC in this model. You also have Bluetooth and a whole host of other features as well. The front of the display is a 5.1-inch display. It's 1080p, has 432 pixels per inch, and is really nice to look at. It's very vibrant. It's an AMOLED display, and that's kind of what you expect from those. On the top of the phone, you have a little indicator light that flashes when you've got some new messages, like many other Android phones. You've got an earpiece, and then on the right, you have a 2-megapixel forward-facing camera. Now, on the bottom of this phone, you have Samsung's answer to Touch ID. It's a fingerprint reader, and we'll talk more about it in a little bit, but the fingerprint reader doesn't work so well. On the back of the phone is a 16-megapixel camera, and it does take pretty good photos, but the impressive thing here is the 4K video recording capability. The unfortunate thing is because the front screen is 1080p, you can't really see the 4K, but I did do a separate video on that, and be sure to check that out. I'll leave a link in the description below. Below the camera is a heart rate monitor along with your flash. It turns on the flash to kind of illuminate your finger and checks your heart rate based on that. It actually works pretty well, although I can't say that it's that accurate or not, as I haven't tested it with a medical device. On the right-hand side of the phone, we have our power sleep wake button. Along the top, we have a 3.5mm headphone jack, along with an IR blaster to control your television and DVD players, things like that. On the other side, we have a volume rocker. It has a nice little clicky feel to it. And then on the bottom, we have a microphone along with a little flap that opens and reveals the USB 3.0 port. It works really well. One thing to note is it doesn't seem to transfer using USB 3 on Macs yet. Their software isn't capable of doing that, or compatible rather. And you can transfer regularly, but you can't use the 3.0 feature. You can use a regular micro USB with the cable or with the port as well, and that seems to work just fine. The little flap feels a little flimsy, and hopefully it holds up over time, but I'm not really sure that it will, but what it does is provide that waterproof covering. The phone is waterproof, as you saw in the beginning, and it does a really nice job of keeping the phone safe. The back is a little bit flimsy. When you take the back off, you've got a little gasket here, and that gasket is all that's protecting the back, but it actually works, and every time you turn on the phone and unlock it, it knows that that back's not on, I think, and it tells you, hey, you need to make sure that's on there securely and snap it down. Now, this phone comes equipped with Android 4.4.2 Kitkat, and it also has Samsung's notorious TouchWiz on it. Now, some people like TouchWiz. I'm in the camp that doesn't like TouchWiz. In fact, I'm more for stock Android, and this version of TouchWiz is more optimized, and that's definitely nice, and it makes for a much better experience as far as compared to older versions. Instead of throwing all their software on their phone, what they do is give you an option and kind of an easy way to download most of that software. The software that is on here is a little cleaned up. It's got a little nicer look. They've updated their folder feature a little bit, and it's really a nicer experience than before. They also have some new news feeders, kind of like the HTC One, which I turned off because it slows the phone down a little bit, it seems, and causes it to lag. Once that was turned off, I got much less lag on the phone, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. One of the important things on a phone is obviously call quality. Call quality is pretty good. You can hear people really well, they can hear you really well, and the speaker's loud enough that you can hear them in most environments, unless you're obviously in some really loud area. On the back of the phone, you have a speakerphone, and that speakerphone is really loud. It also is decent for music. It goes pretty loud, but it's nowhere near as good as something like the HTC One's front-facing speakers. The audio quality of the 3.5mm headphone jack is actually pretty good. I used it using my regular headphones between different devices, and it's just up there with the rest of them. Obviously, it depends on the bit rate of your music you're playing back, but overall, it's got a pretty decent sound to it. With the huge battery inside, you get a really good solid day out of it when you use it. Now, if you're using it heavily, you're playing games all day long, I'm not sure it would last through that, but if you're using it regularly, checking your email regularly, browsing the web, maybe using a couple apps here and there, you'll probably get more than a day out of it. At least I seem to get more than a day, and I've probably plugged it in every couple days, honestly, which is definitely a new thing for me with cell phones. It seems to last a really long time, which is definitely nice. Samsung's implementation of fingerprint reading is poor at best. It's really not a good implementation. It doesn't seem to work really well. The setup process is easy enough. It accepts your fingerprint really well. But when it comes time to use it, if you don't line your finger up perfectly, it doesn't work. And I found that in my uses, trying to get into the phone quickly, especially trying to use my thumb, it was much more difficult. It worked maybe 1 out of every 10 times, sometimes more than that, but that was probably the average. I did it quite a few times to see. So I just turned it off. The other thing Samsung's included is S Health that monitors your heart rate. Now you could just check your pulse yourself and count and do that sort of thing, but you can just put your finger on the back of the phone and it will actually check your pulse for you. It's pretty accurate. I haven't tested it against actually other medical equipment, but it seems to do a pretty good job and at least give you a general idea. The app also includes some things such as a pedometer and things like that you'd expect, but you do have to enable it every time you want to use it. It doesn't just turn on automatically and stay, so that's something that could probably be improved with a software update, but would probably kill your battery if it was on all the time too. Overall, the Galaxy S5 is a really good phone. There are some things I don't like about it, like I mentioned the fingerprint reader, but there's other things such as the back that looks like a giant Band-Aid. Depending on the color of the phone that you get, this one being white, it looks a little less obvious, but if you had one of the tan versions, it definitely looks like a giant Band-Aid on the back. The texture is improved over the S4, but it's not improved much better than that, really. You don't have really anything that's anywhere close to what an HTC One or even an iPhone offers as far as build quality. The screen is nice, the phone lasts a long time, it has tons of features, and is customizable, but it doesn't have the build quality of some other Android phones out there, which is really unfortunate because other than that, it's a really nice phone. Yes, I would recommend the Galaxy S5, but I would definitely check out some of the alternatives first before you go ahead and put your money down for it. With the giant display, it might be a little bit large in your hand, so be sure to check that out as well. It will make a big difference when you're holding the phone as opposed to just looking at it online, because it is pretty big, so if you have smaller hands, you may want to consider a smaller phone. But let me know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.